Hi, everyone. This is a great room. This is exciting. My name is Ruth Graham. I'm a national correspondent on religion, faith, and values at the New York Times. I'm based in Dallas. And on behalf of the Texas Tribune, I am delighted to welcome you to the annual Texas Tribune Festival. We are going to talk mainly Bishop Curry will talk, hopefully, for about 45 minutes, and then there'll be a 15-minute audience Q&A. This venue works a little bit differently than the others if you have been elsewhere. You will submit questions to texastribune.org/ask. So if you have questions as we're talking, that's where to put them, and then a wonderful Texas Tribune staff or reporter will read them when the time comes, and so that's how we'll do the Q&A. Before we start, please silence your phones. You're in a church. All right, the Right Reverend Michael Bruce Curry served as the 27th presiding bishop and primate of the Episcopal Church. He was ordained as a priest in 1978, served parishes in North Carolina, Ohio, and Maryland. In 2000, he became the bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina, and then in 2015, elected to a 9-year term as presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church. And to quote from his own bio, the animating vision and message of his ministry is Jesus of Nazareth and his model of radical sacrificial love. Bishop Curry retired in 2024 after more than 40 years of ordained ministry. And we're going to have hopefully a kind of wide-ranging talk here. Bishop Curry, I want to start by asking you a big question. As a religion reporter, I have a really palpable sense of how divided our country is along many lines right now, including lines of faith. Conservative Christians tell me that we are in a revival right now. Young men in particular seem to be coming back to the church. Revivals on college campuses, Bible sales are up, all these indications that are really encouraging to a lot of conservative Christians. On the left, a lot of anxiety about what people describe as Christian nationalism, a kind of political Christianity that feels new and alarming to a lot of people. Tell me what you see as you look across the Christian landscape in the United States right now.
In the United States?
Sure, although if you want to take it global, this is the global Anglican Communion, go for it.
No. Any particular state or just the whole?
The United States, yeah. Well, Texas is not a bad place to, to be having this conversation, but I'm interested nationally, yeah.
I do think, and it's really great to be with y'all. I really do think it's a fairly complex phenomenon. I think it is true that the era of Christendom, as we once came to know it, that's faded. And I remember hearing a woman preach at the ordination of a bishop, and actually it was in the Diocese of Nevada. And at one point in the sermon, she just kind of stopped and said, Christ is coming again, but the 1950s are not. And we all kind of paused because I didn't know where she was going to go with that. But when she said it, it took a second, and I said, that's really true. That the 1950s, which for many churches, certainly the mainline churches, but I think it's true for everybody, that was sort of a high point in terms of numbers. You had that World War II generation was still young. Folk coming back from the war, churches were being built, suburbs were growing, and everything was growth. And the 1960s were a mix because there was a lot of social struggle and important stuff, but it was a struggle. And then we started realizing, probably in the mid-70s, that there was an aging and a decline that seemed to be happening, certainly in the mainline. Evangelicals were rising up. Roman Catholics, except for if they weren't, I remember being in a meeting with Roman Catholic bishops, they said if it wasn't for immigration, we'd be in the same decline everybody else. So that's been sort of the trajectory. We've been in that. What I think I've learned, now I can say this now that I'm retired and have no responsibilities, but I have a feeling that we are in one of those in-between times. And actually, we may always be in in-between times. I think Jesus actually said that. He said, I'll be right back. It was, yeah, exactly. That was a good 2,000 years ago, which meant that's where we live, in these in-between times. And I think that's true for institutional churches. We are changing, and we are going through a change. Christianity, the faith isn't going anywhere. That I have no question about. What it looks like, what it will look like, what forms and shapes it will take, that's for generations yet to see and know. But I am passionately convinced that people of goodwill, people of decency, of all stripes and types, and all religious types, they're not going anywhere. And so I refuse to be downcast. My wife, I get up in the morning and I'm singing, and my wife says, "Shut up, get out of the room." But I am convinced that that we're going through an in-between time, and there is something that will begin to emerge over time. Whether I'll live to see that, I don't know about that. But I do know that what I used to call, when I was the presiding bishop, the Jesus movement. That movement began in crucifixion. It began in defeat, and he rose from the dead. And that's who we are. And therefore, we don't know what shape that resurrected movement's going to take. But we know, because there's a God who's responsible for it, that there are new days ahead. And I'm retired, so I can say that, but it's true.
Well, what might that look like? I mean, I've been thinking too about the main line in mid-century. You have Reinhold Niebuhr on the cover of Time magazine, and there's a sort of cultural stature along with incredible numbers back then. Now I think Pew says about 11% of Americans, identify as mainline Protestants. How does that stream of American Christianity retain its, relevance and its voice, a prophetic voice, perhaps, in a moment like this, with numbers like that?
Yeah, I do think. Remember, it's really important to remember that the Jesus movement, if I can say, I'm talking about Christianity now. I mean, Jesus only had a couple of folk following him. And when you think about it, the Bible doesn't suggest that there were thousands of people following him, while he was on earth. That wasn't the case. It was a movement. And it was a movement of people who saw something in this Jesus that made them want to be with him and near him, and actually emulate what they saw of his spirit in their own lives. And in time, those folk were changed. They were. And they didn't have any endowments. Right? They didn't own any property that was collective church property. They in fact were considered a sect, initially a sect of Judaism, and then a sect within the wider Greco-Roman world. And actually, they didn't start, all right, this is my bias, but I'll go ahead and say it. They really didn't get into trouble until they became the religion of the Roman Empire. It's really not a smart move for the church to align itself too closely with empires. It's just, And so for most of early Christian history, this was a movement of people who were on the outcast. In fact, one scholar describes the people who initially followed Jesus and this movement of his. It was a community of the poor and the wealthy with a passion for heaven. It was the weirdest movement. It was a movement that actually in its origins lived with a radical equality. Take Galatians. I know I'm not here to preach, but you got a preacher, so I might as well do something with it. But you think about just that passage in Galatians, all who have put on Christ. There's in Galatians chapter 3, all who are in Christ, there is no more slave or free. There is no more male or female. There is no more Jew or Greek, for all are one in Christ. That is not just a sociological statement. That is a statement of a radical new reality coming into being when these people decide they're going to live like this Jesus of Nazareth. And there weren't a whole lot of people who were willing to do that or interested. and they didn't have the internet, so they didn't have help. And yet, they really did do the unthinkable. They did the impossible. And I think that's where we're going.
Yeah.
It's not by our choice. If we could choose, of course we'd love Christendom, but that's not our future. Our future is to follow in the way and help to transform this world from a nightmare it often is for far too many into something closer to what Vernon Dozier and Desmond Tutu used to call the dream of God for all of God's creation.
I mean, that sounds to me, that stands out to me as an answer because it is such a positive vision. My sense right now is for a lot of progressive Christians in the Trump era, there's a lot of energy spent defining themselves, against what we're, reading about in the newspaper and seeing in headlines and seeing on TV, and the powerful and more prominent streams of Christianity. Talk to me a little bit about the role of political identity, maybe, in the Christian life. And then I'm also curious kind of about the responsibility of Christian leaders who represent this other stream of what it means to be a Christian, and kind of the responsibility in this moment to be a part of those conversations.
One of the things that when I was elected Bishop of North Carolina, it was the first time I had spent my entire ministry as the priest or pastor of churches that were predominantly African American, not exclusively, but predominantly. And so I spent my early ministry in urban black communities. Winston-Salem would be a small city, but urban black communities. And I didn't have to articulate the Christian gospel in a context where there were a lot of different political opinions. Now, everybody didn't agree on everything. Trust me, they didn't. But they all voted the same way for the most part. Okay?
True of a lot of churches.
Yeah. And that was kind of, that was just the way it was. I didn't tell anybody how to vote or anything. I didn't deal with that kind of stuff. Then I became bishop of an Episcopal diocese in North Carolina. And a wonderful diocese, but a moderate one. And North Carolina is a moderating context. That's just in its DNA. And all of a sudden, everybody had opinions. Everybody had opinions. Should we have the American flag in the church or not? You think about it, and then issues of human sexuality began to come to the fore. So what does that mean for us, and how do we live that? How do we actually be a truly inclusive community that actually looks something like the kingdom of God, something like the book of Revelation says, I saw people from every nation and tribe on. Are we really, what does that look like when you actually put it into practice? How are we going to do it? And all of a sudden, I was living with radical diversity. And what I found, what I learned, what the folk of North Carolina helped me to see and learn was that we share some common values. And we do share some common convictions. We got a lot of opinions. And we all have opinions, and there's nothing wrong with opinions. Otherwise, nobody would ever get married. And so you got a multitude of opinions, and that's good. And that creates democracy, is necessary for that reason, and it can work. But common values, we actually do share some, we don't agree on everything, but we share some common values. And if you help folk, I found if you help articulate a vision, what are the values of the gospel? Well, let's go to Matthew. Let's go to the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Blessed are the poor and the poor in spirit. Blessed are the merciful, the compassionate. Blessed are those who hunger that God's justice might really be done in this world. Blessed are the people. If we share some, love God, love your neighbor. On these two hang all the law and the prophets. Jesus said, this is the Supreme Court right here. Love God, love your neighbor. And he was quoting Moses. So he said, you got Moses on this, you got Jesus on this. That's a good team to work with. And so I realized that if we stay with what we agree on, the faith that we do hold, the common values that Jesus taught us, we will be able to walk together even in great diversity. And that's why Paul in Galatians 3 says, all who have put on Christ, there is no more male or female. There is no more Jew or Greek. There's no more slave or free, for all are one in Christ. And when we find ourselves there, we can walk through the most difficult things together. And if the chief value is love the God who loved you so much, he gave you life, and love that neighbor even when you don't like them. Love them. You don't have to agree with them, right? But love them is the bottom line. And when we do that, we can make it. It's true of us in church, and that, I believe, is true in civil society as well. But without that love, that you are my sister and I'm your brother, and you hold me to account, that love is being honest and holding each other to account. But love is also treating that other person the way you want to be treated and the way you would want members of your family and your loved ones to be treated. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That was, again, Jesus now quoting the Torah, going back. If we do that, I said that to a member of Congress once. This was when I was Bishop of North Carolina, and I don't remember what the issue was around immigration. This was some years ago, and I don't remember the specific issues we were dealing with. And I finally said, you have a harder job, a much more difficult job than I do. And I thank God for you, and I'm going to keep you in prayer. But I also want you to know it may not be as difficult as you think. Because he had told me he was a Christian, and I was so glad he admitted it. I said, okay, now we can work on this. And I said, Jesus said, it's in the Sermon on the Mount, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In other words, treat other folk the way you want to be treated. Treat them the way you want your family to be treated. And since you're a legislator, only be supportive of legislation that treats other folk the way you want your own family to be treated. That's not a proof text, but it sure gives you some good guidance on what to do or how to do it, and also how to engage on how you do it. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, it's a great answer, but I also wonder what happens when the people on the other side of the aisle or the particular issue might think or talk about their own motivations as also being motivated by love. I hear a lot from the right about that speaking truth is a form of love, and so I wonder what happens when everyone across the spectrum says, well, sure, this is based in love, and also I guess another way of getting at what I'm thinking at here is how do you turn the other cheek and act in love when you are not being treated that way by the people you're engaging with?
When Jesus said, turn the other cheek, that whole passage, the late Walter Wink, and it was a New Testament, he used to teach at Union Seminary in New York. But anyway, he one of the things he said was, we forget that turn the other cheek is a nonviolent strategy for change. It's not about capitulating. You see what I mean? Mahatma Gandhi saw that in Jesus, and finally Christians said, oh, that's what Jesus was talking about. Martin Luther King picked that up, and we had a whole civil rights movement that was predicated on turn the other cheek, not as capitulation, not as becoming a doormat, but becoming a doorway to a new future. Violence will get us nowhere. If that's all we do, it won't work. But my turning the other cheek creates the possibility for change and a new future. Desmond Tutu's book, where he remembered the trials, the Peace and Truth and Reconciliation trials, was called No Future Without Forgiveness. And that's why I'm saying, if I didn't believe that this Christian way of being is the way to work through change, the way to make decisions, the way to agree without being If I didn't believe that, you'd have to get somebody else to talk to tonight.
Well, let me ask you a practical example of this. This is a moment of serious division in the global Anglican Church. Factions of Anglicans, mostly in the global South, have rejected the authority of the new Archbishop of Canterbury. You know, a lot of these divides about same-sex marriage. Breakaway group in the United States now, the Anglican Church in North America. And of course, all these groups claim to be the sort of true Anglican Church. And, you know, this is a tradition that has invested a lot and cares a lot about staying in communion. But that's also not, as a reporter, what I see when I look around and, you know, really look at global Anglicanism. What is the way forward, you know, specifically for your tradition as you see it?
You know, we have to do the hard work of loving anyway. Now, I say that, and now I'm retired now, so I can, but actually I say that from a position where I was elected presiding bishop in June of 2015. And at that same general convention of the Episcopal Church, the church formally opened canon law to make marriage gender neutral, which created space for same-sex marriage. Didn't require it, but created space for that. Didn't change the vows, didn't change what couples are expected to do, and all that stayed the same. It just meant that the people who can participate in the sacrament of holy matrimony could be same-sex or different sex. So we did that at General Convention. Everybody came, not everybody, but folk came back home, and the many voices in the Anglican Communion said, "What did you all just do?" And at first I thought I could say, well, I'm not technically presiding bishop till November. Let me give you her phone number. But I spent the first couple of years having to explain that to our brothers and sisters around the world. And I was scheduled to be in Ghana that fall, in September, October, and meeting with African bishops. And my opening talk to them was, I said, look, let me tell you what I'm about. I'm about this Jesus of Nazareth. And I really believe that this brother has shown us how to love and how to live and how to make it, how to be people of integrity, and ultimately how to get to heaven too. But how to do something that matters, a life that matters while you're here on earth. That's our first, and that's what we're about. How do we love each other, love God, and love each other? And a bishop from Kenya, when it came time for questions, stood up and said, "Are you telling me that the Episcopal Church in the United States is about Jesus?" I said, "I'm telling you the Episcopal Church in the United States is about Jesus." The bishops in this church knew me. I had been a bishop already 15 years. They knew who I was and what I was about. They knew that I believe in Jesus and social justice together. I believe in love and setting folk free. I believe in this gospel. If I didn't believe it, I'd go on Broadway and tell jokes and make real money. And he said, "You're serious?" I said, "I'm absolutely serious." Anyway, conversations continued from that time. I say that to say that everyone is not comfortable with that. But more people than we think are willing to disagree with you if you know that you care about them and that you actually are a person of integrity and that you are a person who lives by love. I'm telling you that I've seen them. I've seen it around the communion. We had a meeting, it was in January of the next year. And basically, the archbishops from around the world were all gathered there. And we were meeting in Canterbury, at Canterbury Cathedral. And I had to explain why we did and what we did. And while a significant portion just couldn't go along with it, there was a group, and they haven't changed on that. Most of the archbishops and moderators and presiding bishops who were there said, I really disagree with you, but I like you. That's good enough. I mean, we don't have to all get it at the same time. I remember I won't say who it was, but one archbishop said, Curry, if you were in my country, we'd go out to dinner and have a good time. I just couldn't have you preach in the pulpit. I said, well, if we have a good meal, that's good enough for me. I mean, we don't have to, the point is relationships transform stuff, and that takes time. It doesn't happen quickly. Look, the Civil War that we had in this country, we're still working to fix, to redeem, to reconcile. We're still working on that. And that was, over 100 years ago? It was a long time ago. And that's true even with church conflicts and divisions. But I am convinced that people of goodwill and genuine faith who are committed to following in the footsteps of Jesus of Nazareth will find a way to live together and actually be a witness for the rest of the world that we can actually learn to live together as brothers and sisters. What Dr. King said, we will either learn to live together as brothers and sisters or we'll perish together as fools.
And it's a good thing you're kind of describing a picture of the Anglican communion that can accommodate people with differing theological and, cultural views on some of these things, but that can still come together.
It still can. I can't tell, I'm not revealing anything that I shouldn't reveal, but there was a pastoral situation in a country where the church disagreed profoundly with the Episcopal Church here. And I called the Archbishop and got him and told him what was going on. And he said, let me see what I can do. And they helped a young person who was in a tenuous situation. They helped out. Human being to human being. Follower of Jesus to follower of Jesus. And we don't agree on sexuality.
Yeah.
And he's in a context that's not in relationship with our, but when there was a need, if we can do that, that's baby steps. But a baby gotta take baby steps before they grow up and take bigger steps. So my thing is, don't give up. We cannot quit. We can quit when God does. And since that's not likely to happen, we keep going on. We keep working at relationships. When something doesn't work, then go on and, build somewhere else. But don't give up on us. And don't give up on this world or this country. There is more good in it. I'm telling you, there is. There's more good in it than the other.
What can you tell us about the new, I would love to hear you talk just a little bit about the new Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Mullally. She's the first woman in this role, considered first among equals, I guess is the phrase in the Anglican Church. And so she's brand new, I guess just a month or so in the job, and I'd love to hear, kind of what you expect from the Mullally era.
Well, she again, I'm retired, so I speak from a place of privilege.
That means you can say a little more,
I can say
right?
what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is, I don't know if you know her background is, she was a nurse for years. And then I don't know what the title was, but she was the chief nurse for the British health system. So she's skilled at overseeing large, complex institutions. And being Archbishop of Canterbury, I didn't know it until I was a presiding bishop and involved with that. It's a twofer. On the one hand, the Archbishop of Canterbury is the chief primate of the Church of England. And so basically, they're kind of like a presiding bishop of the Church of England. Well, that's a whole church in and of itself. And then you add monarchies and you add more. It's a complex. That's one part of the job. The other part of the job is you're the spiritual leader of 85 million Anglicans around the world, which means this is more complex than Congress. And so that's a part of the job. She is well positioned. She is to be able to navigate that kind of complexity from her prior experience. Again, from her prior experience. And she also, and she's the Bishop of London, which is a large metropolitan. I mean, that's a biggie. And so it's a complex system. But she's a nurse. And nurses, I mean, if you go back in the Hebrew, I've forgotten my Hebrew word for nurse, but the word for nurse or nursing pops up in the pastoral epistles about ways to care and relate to people and how God relates to folk. You find it in some of the pastoral epistles, which is fascinating. She's a nurse. She does know how to care. She also knows how to make stuff happen. Yeah. And you put that together, and I think the Holy Spirit or whoever made the choice, I think they've made the right choice, the right person for this time. And she, she's going to run into rough waters. That's the way it is. But she knows how to navigate it. If you've been the head of a large bureaucracy, like part of the British healthcare system, you can handle the Anglican Communion.
Well, as you mentioned, you're retired. I want to go way back in your biography and ask you, your father, both of your parents were converts to the Episcopal Church. Your father was a priest in an Episcopal Church. You grew up in the church. What did you see? I mean, what made you want to step into that same role and become a priest all those years ago?
Wow. I haven't been asked that question in years, but thank you. Well, my father was, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and my grandparents maternal were all from North Carolina, and paternal were Alabama, parts of Ohio. And so I grew up in a family that was pretty Christian. It was a question of whether you were, most folk were Baptists, and then there was a smaller group Pentecostal, and then a very small group of Episcopalians. And the family joke was you knew who had died at the funeral, one, how long the service was going to be, and then how long it would be until you get the repast after the service, because you got to go to the cemetery. And the family joke was that if somebody from the Baptist wing of the family had died, even if the service was in the morning, you weren't going to eat until late afternoon. If it was the Pentecostal holiness side of the family, it might be tomorrow.
Hungry, yeah.
But if it was the Episcopalian side, you were going to get brunch. And it was just sort of kind of a standard. So I grew up in that world, that kind of ferment, and where folk would argue over the Bible at a picnic, family reunion kind of picnic kind of thing. And faith was just a given. And I remember my father, he used to say, it drove us crazy because he used to tell us the story, just me and my sister, it was just two of us, that he became an Episcopalian because of my mother, who had become one, and she became Episcopal. This would have been in the 40s, I'm guessing, and he was Baptist and was studying at Daniel Payne Seminary at Wilberforce University in Southern Ohio, and she was a mathematician working at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and teaching on the side, teaching math at the university on the side. And they met and they were courting, and somehow she invited him to church. So this is in the 40s. And so they went to church, and if you think Episcopal churches are quiet now, in the 40s, they were like monasteries. It was like real quiet. Nobody talked at all. Nobody did anything that wasn't written in the prayer book. You only said amen or amen when the prayer book said you were supposed to say it. Even if you felt it, you kept that to yourself. I mean, this is the 1940s, and it's kind of like that, what Barbara Streisand saying, the way we were. That's just the way we were. Well, he had never been in a church. He said he'd never been in a church that quiet because he grew up Baptist, so he never had been. And then when it came time for communion, in those days we didn't have shared communion, so if you weren't confirmed and all that, you couldn't get communion. And so he sat there and watched Mommy go up. Now, again, my mother was black, and she was dark-skinned. Daddy was light-skinned. She was dark-skinned. So you couldn't mistake her. Well, she went up for communion, knelt at the rail, and in those days, only the priest administered communion. You didn't have lay people doing that. We've changed. We actually have changed. It's proof that we can change. We actually have. So the priest was coming by and was given the bread, and then they would go and get the chalice, and everybody at the rail would receive the chalice. And they were the only black folk in this is late 1940s in Southern Ohio. And he saw her drink from the cup, and then he was looking to see, because the next person next to her was clearly white, and he looked to see what that person was going to do, and that person drank from the cup, and he just kept going down the rail. And he said, I never thought I'd live to see that. And he used to sell, he told us, we didn't want to hear it as kids, but he told us any church where black folk and white folk drink from the same cup is a church that knows something about the gospel that I want to be a part of. And that's how my daddy became an Episcopalian. And that conviction has been with me now at 72 years old and has driven much of my ministry and the passion behind it. And that's, we don't always live up to it. I mean, I've been around long enough to know that. But we got a goal to strive. There's a gospel that can get us where we want to be. And I believe that. Oh.
I can't let this time pass without asking you one question about the royal wedding between Prince Harry.
A royal wedding? When did that happen?
Between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, which of course you preached at, the sermon heard around the world. I think almost 2 billion people worldwide watched that wedding. As we're thinking about kind of big stages for the main line, it's hard for me to think of, another moment in the 21st century that matches that one. I wonder how you approached that moment as a preacher, but also if you thought of that as a moment for evangelism. I mean, that's maybe, as a concept that's maybe a little uncomfortable, but thinking about that stage and how you wanted to approach your message in that moment.
I honestly did think about it as a moment to present the Christian faith that really is centered and grounded in the way of unselfish, sacrificial love that really does seek the good and the welfare of others, as well as the self, but in unselfish ways. And so I really did want, and I was very aware that I didn't know it was going to be 2 billion people. I can't even, anyway, can't even picture it. But I really did want to say something of significance that matters, that gets to the core of what it is that Jesus was talking about and what it is to follow him. And so once I heard, I think the Archbishop of Canterbury called in February, early February. And I was traveling, so he got a member of my staff, and when the staff member got me, I said, look, get out of here. What is this, April Fools? I mean, I really didn't actually believe it. He said, it really is, and you can't tell anybody. I said, what do you mean I can't tell anybody? He said, you can't tell anybody, including your wife. I said, so I got to keep a secret from my wife? You're going to mess up my marriage, man. So, because they had to, the question that I was asked was the way the question was framed was, if you were asked, would you accept giving the address is what it was called at the marriage of the prince and Meghan.
The address.
The address.
Okay.
Right. I said, so is this the same as the sermon?
Right.
And we got back to the Archbishop, and his comment was, "You Americans just have to change everything, don't you?" I mean, you just have to change everything. So once we did that, it had to, the final approvals had to get in, and then officially it went in. And then I had to submit a copy of the sermon ahead of time, like easily a month ahead of time. And it had to be reviewed at different, it kind of went from palace to palace, and then eventually got to the big palace.
Did you get notes? Did they make changes?
They didn't change a thing.
Yeah.
They didn't. Now, what they didn't know was you get a black preacher, and sometimes the Spirit may add something in that wasn't on the piece of paper. But it's, and so no, they honestly didn't change anything, and there was nothing.
Right.
Even the riffs were consistent with it.
Right.
It became an opportunity for maybe the global community to pray for a couple. Not because of who they were, but because they were children of God, and they were both scared to death. And I would have been too. And to actually pray for them like you would for your own son and daughter. And to present a way of being Christian that actually looks something like Jesus of Nazareth. And say, this is what we strive to be. We don't always make it. God knows we don't always make it. But this is what it looks like when once in a while we get it right. And that was a great honor. The only thing that was really kind of bizarre was, this is not bizarre, but the British are much better at handling security that you never see, because it's all there. But they do it. I guess they've been doing it longer too, I suppose. But it's not like you saw people walking around with Uzis, but they were there, and there were folk all over the place, and you could kind of tell how they stand. But nobody was like standing reading a newspaper during the service, pretending that they weren't there for. But there was this one security guy who was off to my right. He was off to my right, and I knew he was there, and I knew what he was there for. And so when I was up preaching, I remember for the first part of the service, he was kind of like this. He was sitting down. He was sitting down, and kind of like this. And then I got to at some point in the sermon, I quoted the hymn, "There's a Balm in Gilead," and it's an old spiritual, and so I quoted that, and I had checked with the Archbishop ahead of time. I said, "Well, people know that at least in church." He said, "Well, people who go to church here would know it." I said, "Well, okay." He said, "You can go with it. It's we sing it here." So I went with it, and you know how the refrain is, "There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul." And so I quoted it and just said, "Oh, there is a balm. Oh, there is a balm." He stood up on his feet, and I said, "Oh, Lord Jesus, I got to get out of this." And I haven't looked at the tape, but you'll see on the tape, I try to redefine a healing balm, a good balm, a loving balm. And so that was that. It was a real blessing. And they are almost disregard what you see in the, I'm not against the press or media, but the tabloids, world. They were a young couple. And they got 2 little kids, and they are a family, and they really are.
I'm going to ask one more question, but first, before we get to the Q&A, I just want to reiterate again, let me make sure I have this address right to submit your questions, texastribune.org/ask. So now is kind of, probably the last time to submit, because we'll switch over after this one last question. Every week, every Sunday morning in the Episcopal Church, all around the country, all around the world, in Anglican churches, well, this is probably not true all over the world, actually, but in the U.S., we pray in the prayers of the people for our President Donald. That's true for every presidency. And I'm wondering how you pray that prayer right now and how you think about praying for our elected officials in this moment in our nation's history. How do you pray for our President Donald right now?
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first thing I do. And I do think, I mean, just using the Episcopal Church right now, but the prayer book, I do using the prayer book. Because whatever Michael's opinions are, right, wrong, or indifferent, the language of prayers that have been thought and prayed over as a way of calling me to my higher self. And in prayer, even on days when I say, doggone it, get on your knees and pray for him, for his family, for all those who are in leadership and authority, that they may do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God. Get on your knees, Michael, and pray for them, that they will learn the ways of justice, because they're children of God too. And that's where I find, you know, what's one of the Psalms says, "Set me on a rock that is higher than I." That's where I've got to climb higher than where Michael would normally. The mud I enjoy playing in. Set me on a rock that is higher than I. And so I do, and that doesn't mean I agree with him, or anybody for that matter. I mean, but I don't agree with my wife every day. I mean, she's right, but I don't. You know? And so I do, and I know that can be hard at times. There can be trauma in that. Not for me, I wouldn't claim that, but for others, I know that. And yet, this is part of the nonviolent way of love that Jesus taught us. And I'm gonna trust that Jesus knows what he's doing. Yeah. And it's part of giving in my whole life. And like the old song, "Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. I am the potter, you are the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will, while I am waiting, yielding and still." It's like that old hymn. Yeah. And that's trusting God. Now, that doesn't mean I agree with him or stand on the same side with him in various issues. But he and others in his administration, they are children of God just like you and me. And that's what Jesus did. And actually, the brother did okay. We still celebrate his birthday. I mean, you know.
Well, let's let some others ask some questions. Loemi is somewhere here. Okay, great. And she has the questions, so I will turn it over to her to ask some audience questions.
Everybody, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yes. Okay. So we have a couple of questions here. Sharon Watkins from Georgetown, Texas, asks, given what Jesus said about sowing and reaping, what is the U.S. reaping for itself when it's sowing terror by dispatching armed ICE agents into communities and violently grabbing people off the streets?
Well, and honest, to be very honest, that is not the American way. The American way is to do what is just. It's also to do what is merciful. And to do both of those is to order things aright. There must be respectful civic order, but to do it in ways that are humane and just and kind and compassionate. Every one of my uncles, yeah, all of them, my uncles, fought in the Second World War. And, well, except one, I take it back, except one. And they fought and served in segregated units. They fought for the ideals of this country, that the ideals of freedom and justice and human equality, that those are right, even if the country doesn't live them. Thomas Jefferson's words were right. The God who gave us life gave us liberty at the same time, he wrote. The Declaration of Independence, the basic concepts and words, it's right. Even though Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner, he was wrong in much of the way he lived. But his words were right. The ideals were right. And to be able to stand for what is right in a way that is right and loving, that is, I believe, the way of Jesus. And our country will truly be great when it is good, when it is kind, and when we are just. When I was a kid, I used to come home and turn on the TV. There were only 3 channels. I think the 4th was PBS. I think you could get PBS sometimes. And Superman came on. And when Superman stood there, it's kind of hokey, it really is hokey now, but do you see it? He stood for truth, justice, and the American way. Those civil values are who we are. And a country grounded in those values does not take little children off the streets who are trick-or-treating and put them in police cars and cart them off. The country where we are, we want to be a country of law and order. Let's have law and order and do things in a manner that's orderly and that are just. When America is good, then America will be great.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a few more questions. Ryan from Austin asks, many younger Americans, especially those not attracted to Christian nationalism, have felt disillusioned with the Christian faith in recent times. As a young Episcopalian, how can the Episcopal Church embrace and welcome many of those disillusioned folks looking for a safe and welcoming spiritual home?
Mm-hmm. How can the church do it?
How can they welcome some of these disillusioned folks who are turned off by the kind of more Christian nationalism perception?
You know, now there's some practical things, but I don't know if y'all know that hymn, they will know we are Christians by our love, by our love. They will know we are Christians by our love. It's true. First of all, they'll know it, young people, by seeing the way we actually live out the love we proclaim in Jesus, in our personal lives, but in our corporate life as a church. How does this church live not for itself alone, but for others? How does this church both feed the hungry and work to abolish hunger? How does this church make a difference in its community? Doesn't have to be a big difference, but make a difference in this community for the good. If there are needs that we can attend to, how do we attend to them? When they see that, and we invite them into that, into walking the way with Jesus, that has the longer term better prospect for helping them walk the King's Highway, as the hymn said. Anyway, I really believe it's by showing and doing and inviting them to join us on that. I used to go to a barbershop. I still go to the barbershop, but I used to go to one that was like all these young black guys. And so, I was the old man coming in there. And none of them went to church. And they knew I was bishop. None of them went to church. And this was during Hurricane, New Orleans. Katrina, yeah. Thank you, old man. But anyway, and Katrina, and they always would ask where was I going, want to know, where. And so I told them where I was going, and I was, going to New Orleans and would be there a little while, and with some other bishops who were volunteering to go. They took up a collection. That's the first time our worlds intersected beyond just talking about them. And I don't know if I got any of them in church. I'm not sure about that. But they got burned close. They were knocking at the door. And I said, that's it. If we just do that, some are going to knock at that door, and some are going to walk in. And I hope they meet a community of love in that place.
Thank you. Anna from Dallas asks, what role do you see the Episcopal Church playing in advancing policy or systemic change around substance use abuse, and mental health?
And mental health. Well, the one thing, a number of things. There's some things that can be done locally in local communities, churches and communities. And I know that there's a guidebook that's maybe it's been produced. Again, I've been out of it now, but that the General Convention asked that a book on accessing resources for mental health in various communities be developed in various communities. I know that was in process. I don't know if it's been completed, but there may be, actually, they could contact, gosh, now I wish I knew. I may think of it before. Actually, you know what? Contact the Episcopal Church and ask the question, what are the resources that the church, the presiding bishop's office, can provide or direct us to? That'd be cool.
Thank you.
That'd make my successor's day. But go ahead. But this last convention was the first time that I remember that there was serious engagement with issues and concerns around mental health. And that was one of the outcomes. There were some other ones, but that may be a way to start, a place to start.
Great, thank you. It's certainly an important topic. And I think our last question, because we just have a few minutes left, is Angelica from Houston asks, how do you see the proliferation of technology, such as AI tools, reshaping the Christian practice, be it through, access to information, rise of digital communities, rapid amplification of specific beliefs, etc.?
Gosh. Yeah. Well, the honest answer is, I haven't got the foggiest idea. I mean, I could guess. I have to admit, I'm just stumbling into AI by accident, because you get a choice if you're online. And if I'm in Safari, they ask you, which way do you want to go? And I say, I don't care. And so I just take one way or the other. But I can tell you this. I do know that there are online communities kind of hosted by churches that started during the pandemic and have continued. That has, I've run into them and clergy and folk who are involved with them and working with them and trying to figure out how do you do pastoral relationships in those kind of contexts. And you can. It just takes a little work. And it's very often larger churches that can do that have the staff, equipment, and all that kind of stuff, and can dedicate somebody as the pastor for that. The National Cathedral still does that, and actually has an audience, a congregation of people from around the world during the pandemic.
No common cup there, though, right? Isn't there something, that common cup you spoke about, is that's not online, right?
No, there's no way to do that. Yeah, that's the downside. And that suggests even the level of community, community coming, so you can't get everything. You're right, it really is, but you can get some. And I do think that may be where stumbled, I think, into a way to reach and be in relationship with folk we might not have come in contact with otherwise. I mean, I did. There's a little church up in Colorado that, and I mean, I'm talking about a congregation of maybe 20 people, and they had a feeding program that they did in person. I mean, in their community, Leadville. I think that's you know.
I know Leadville
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're remarkable.
I think it's the highest elevation in the town, right?
Yeah, it is. And they were doing this before the pandemic. Then the pandemic hit, and they had to kind of, they couldn't, I think they then kind of set the food or set whatever it was, these were perishable, non-perishable goods, but they would put them out somewhere like outside the church, and people could come get them so they could keep the distance and all that. And then eventually they found a way to, I don't know if they rented a bus or whatever it was, but they found a way to distribute the food in safe, ways. And this is a congregation of 15 or 20 people. I'm guessing I never got to go and visit them. I really wanted to visit them. I guess I would be the median age, and I'm 72. Actually, I might be the youth group. And the thing is, these folk, God bless them, they're doing it. I mean, they are doing it. And that's what love looks like. That's what it looks like. And that is the most evangelical witness that or something like it that I could ever think of. These people don't live for themselves alone, but for the good and the well-being of others. I mean, I think it's in the Bible. I could be wrong. Y'all could correct me, but I think it says in John 3:16, God so loved the world that he did what?
Gave his only begotten son.
He gave his only begotten son. He gave, he didn't take. Mm-hmm. He gave. That's what love looks like. And I don't remember what the question was now, but
that's a good, yeah.
Is that it?
No, thank you. Yes, you
Yeah.
addressed a couple of things there. I'm going to quickly add the last special question that came in, and then I think we're done here. Mary McCall from Tarboro Calvary Episcopal Church says, "You confirmed me in 2011. I'll never forget that
That's
day."
in North Carolina, yeah.
And she says, "Thank you so much for being here and for that special occasion. What is next for you?"
Oh my gosh. You know what? I really don't know. That's what I'm cogitating now. And I mean, Bishop, our presiding bishop now, Bishop Rowe, was kind enough to dedicate a staff person to kind of manage me. And I know what they were up to, but to manage me and to help me navigate and keep the calendar and, do all the footwork and all that kind of stuff. But, so I'm getting around the church, and he said, "We want you to keep speaking, keep preaching. Don't, as long as you can, keep on," which was very kind. And so, I want to do that. But I'm longer term, I'm not sure yet. I mean, that's the honest answer. I know I want to get a dog. And we haven't told the cat that, but I want to get a dog. But I do want to think, okay, where can I contribute, as the years allow me to do so, as the body allows me to do, because I don't, want to just sit home and watch soap operas, although I do watch a couple of soap operas with my wife. Once you get hooked, see, now I know ways of evangelism. If you make it as good and interesting as a soap opera, I mean, people will go to church again. But anyways, and I've noticed they don't ever go to church. But anyway, that's another.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bishop.
Oh, thank you all. God bless you. Thank you.